Hey, everybody. Rich Eisen here, wishing you the happiest of New Year's. It's 2022, but also still the 2021 NFL season, and 2 weeks left in it to boot. Longest regular season ever, meaning week 17 is the penultimate week. And we've got a busy Sunday. No Thursday games this week. There's no games on Saturday either. So 9 early, 5 late, Sunday night football, 15 of the 16 games all on the week 17 Sunday. What a way to kick off the new year. And I'm breaking it all down for you right now, thanks to my friends from Courtyard by Marriott. Let's start in Western New York, where the Buffalo Bills have suddenly found a new life, new legs, with a 2-game win streak, taking on an Atlanta Falcons team needing a win to stay alive in the NFC playoff picture. If the Bills win this game, they can clinch a playoff spot with a win against Atlanta, combined with a loss by the Ravens, or with a win against Atlanta, combined with losses, plural, from the Chargers and Raiders. That's the way the Buffalo Bills can clinch a playoff spot in week 17. Despite all their ups and downs this year, they also control their own destiny to win the AFC East. If they win their final 2, they punch a home playoff ticket for themselves. So that's a big game. As for the Ravens, they're in must-win territory now in the 8th spot in the AFC. On the outside looking in there, and the Bengals can clinch the AFC North. So that would take that path to the playoffs out for the Ravens. They need to win this game, in other words, and obviously hope that Lamar Jackson can come back soon, if not this week, because they're taking on a very stout team from Los Angeles, the Rams, who are on a roll in first place now in the NFC West, which they could clinch on Sunday with a win in Baltimore, combined with an Arizona loss in Dallas later in the day. Huge stakes in Baltimore at the bank on Sunday. Then you've got the aforementioned Bengals with a win on Sunday. They would clinch the AFC North. Yes, Joe Burrow would play a home playoff game in year 2, and he's coming off that huge monster 525-yard performance against Baltimore. And here's the catch. They've got the Chiefs in their house, and the Chiefs, as we know, are on a roll, and they're the 1 seed coming in. And if they win this game, combined with a Tennessee loss later in the day, the Chiefs would clinch home field advantage throughout the entire AFC playoffs. It would go through Arrowhead, a big game in the jungle. As for Tennessee, huge game there in Nashville. The second-ranked Tennessee Titans in the AFC taking on the resurgent Miami Dolphins, who are now 8-7, the first team in the history of the NFL to lose 7 games in a row during the season, and then during the same season, win 7 in a row. They won their first in New England, pardon me. Then they lost 7 in a row. Now they've won 7 in a row. They're 8-7. They're the 7th seed, and to stay and to hold on to that spot and keep their spot in the wild card race and keep their spot maybe to try and win the division, which is still open for them, depending on what Buffalo and New England does, obviously. The Dolphins need to win this game, in other words. If they don't, the Tennessee Titans clinch the AFC South, regardless of what the Indianapolis Colts do later on in the day against the Las Vegas Raiders. That's another game that goes down in the early window on Sunday. And that's a huge one because the Colts can clinch a playoff spot regardless of what Tennessee does. If they win this game, they clinch a playoff spot and join the 2018 Texans as the only teams in the history of the NFL to start 0-3 and still make the playoffs. The Vegas Raiders come in 10th in the AFC. They're on a nice little roll themselves, keeping their hopes to make a playoff spot in the wild card position alive. The Chiefs have already clinched the AFC West. So a big game for both teams in Indianapolis, needing to win to stay alive in the playoff race like the Raiders or make the playoffs like the Colts. So keeping an eye on all of that while we then move to New England, where the New England Patriots have a playoff clinching scenario. Despite losing 2 in a row, they need this win, and they've got a get-right opponent in their house. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. If the New England Patriots win this game and Miami loses to Tennessee, the Dolphins, the Patriots are in the playoffs. If they win this game and Vegas loses to Indianapolis, the Patriots are in the playoffs. So those are 2 very feasible playoff clinching scenarios for New England to get back in the playoffs after missing it last year. And those are your AFC playoff clinching scenarios coming into week number 17. There is an NFC playoff clinching scenario in the early window in week 17, and it belongs to, wait for it, yes, the Philadelphia Eagles. How about that? The Eagles, with their downs and ups and then more downs than ups, they're up again, and they're sitting there in the 7th seed in the NFC right now, entering week 17. And if they win at Washington and Minnesota loses to Green Bay later on in the night without Kirk Cousins, that's feasible. And then New Orleans loses later on in the late window against Carolina. Philadelphia, check mark, they're in the playoffs. If Philadelphia wins this game and Minnesota loses later and San Francisco wins later against the Texans, the Philadelphia Eagles are in the playoffs. And guess what? That's kind of a feasible scenario, don't you think? Other games in the early window of note, well, they're all of note because we run through every last one of them. Tampa Bay is at New York, meaning Tom Brady's visiting the Jets again, meaning take cover, flight crew in New York. Tom is coming back in a spot where he likes to win, as we all know. And then the Giants are on the road at Chicago in a fascinating game because the Giants, who are entering this game 5th in the draft order, are taking on the Bears, who enter the game 8th in the draft order. And that's important for the Giants because the Giants own the Bears' first-round draft choice because, yes, the Giants let the Bears move up to use their spot on Justin Fields last year. So either way, the Giants are going to have one of their first-round picks improved and also be degraded a little bit. Either way, I guess they win. One of their first round picks coming up in next April is going to get better in this game. Late window games now. The Denver Broncos are visiting the Los Angeles Chargers, who are down and not yet out. They're now the 9th seed in the AFC. They've been sitting in a wild card spot for quite some time. Just a couple of weeks ago, up on the Chiefs on Thursday night. Had they won that game, they now had a really good shot to win the division. Right now, they're the 9th seed, needing a win against the Broncos, who need this win to get back to 500. The Broncos are the 13th seed in the AFC, which is the lowest seed of any team that is yet to be eliminated from the playoff race. If Denver loses, they would be eliminated from the playoff race. Then later on, I mentioned Carolina and New Orleans. New Orleans needing a win to stay in the NFC playoff picture. Carolina's already been eliminated. Both Detroit and Seattle are eliminated already. It's remarkable that Seattle is coming in with the record that it has and is already eliminated with 2 weeks to go. Normally, they've got a playoff clinching scenario, just like the Dallas Cowboys had last week, just like the Arizona Cardinals had last week. Arizona at Dallas, both teams are in the playoffs. But how huge is this game? Because Arizona needs to win it to stay alive in the NFC West race that they were leading since jump. And now they're out of it. And now Dallas comes in on an absolute roll. Dallas's offense matching its defense in intensity and also in scoring. Last week, they put it all together. It certainly looks like the Dallas Cowboys arrow is pointing up. If Dallas loses this game, that opens the door for Green Bay on Sunday Night Football to clinch home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs at Lambeau Field. Just like last year, we know that didn't work out, but the Packers are on a roll. And if the Cowboys want to stay right on their heels, they need to win this game against the Arizona Cardinals, which would be, once again, just fine to the Los Angeles Rams. The San Francisco 49ers, by the way, have a playoff clinching scenario for themselves against the Houston Texans. They're the 6th seed coming in. Looks like it's going to be Trey Lance at quarterback if they win, and New Orleans loses at the same time against the Carolina Panthers. Then the San Francisco 49ers, check that mark right there, they would be in the playoffs in the NFC. So that's all at stake on Sunday. And then, of course, there's Monday Night Football with the Browns against the Steelers, both teams needing this to stay alive in the playoff race. And should the Bengals lose to the Chiefs earlier in the day, stay alive to win the AFC North, which would still be wide open come Monday night. A huge game whenever the Browns and the Steelers play each other. As we know, the Browns eliminated the Steelers from the playoffs last year, one and done, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this could be Ben Roethlisberger's final game at home in front of the Heinz Field faithful and all the terrible towels waving. And you know the Browns would love to stick it to a guy that has stuck it to the Browns ever since he was drafted by Pittsburgh out of Miami of Ohio because the Browns left him on the draft board. Oh, it's delicious. Have a great New Year's Day weekend, everybody. And I will see you on NFL Network and NFL Game Day Morning. This has been the Week 17 Breakdown brought to you by Courtyard by Marriott.